I know there was something in here because it's got these little notches. So, not sure what that was about, but I decided to put a little bulkhead in there anyways, mostly a tank stopper. So I'll put foam on the front of the tank, and this way the tank isn't going all the way to the firewall, because when it does, let's say the firewall is there. Getting at that tank is going to be a hoot. I guess I could go in this way and grab it, but it's just going to do that. So by limiting it, it'll go in this far, and it'll affect the CG a little bit less, not a lot, when it's fuel levels dropping, and it'll position that tank right where it needs to be. Yeah, and of course I got a dome in it for the fuel lines to go through. I slid that tank in there, and those fuel lines just went straight in perfectly. So that is the plan for that. Like I say, a piece of foam in there, it'll keep that bad boy from chafing into this. And yeah. So I'll glue that in, and then I'm going to get at it with the epoxy, the Z epoxy. Yeah, getting the floor in. Took a couple of clamps to keep everything. I just wanted to make sure the two sides are pressed in on that floor plate that you can't see through all the clamps. Then of course got them down tight on the top of these triangle stock I got in for the firewall. And this clamp, the Corzal plywood's got a little twist or warp in it. So I got this holding everything straight on the lines on the inside, so everything's flush in the back. And I got clamps holding her down tight on this bulkhead here. So she's moving right along. It's coming along pretty good. What's today? October 3rd. So I'm gonna try to get this thing in the air in a week and a half. I'll be stretching it, I think. Well, it's coming together. Well, sorta. Yeah. So I showed before, put the floor plate in. I put triangle stock across there. I think that's around 1/2 inch. And I drilled the holes for the wing dowels. As you can see, I'm going to double this up. I'm gonna over to this triangle stock, but I'm going to double that up. I probably should have waited putting that in, but it's not going to come out, because it's got triangle stock on both sides. I just want it doubled up pretty much where these hardwood dowels are, just for mostly for wear. But yeah. So once I do that, then I can put probably resin, epoxy resin, the inside here, and then I can put the sheeting on. Here, I got the holes drilled. I had the wing set into the holes, but I want to double up. I didn't like the idea, just 16 inch. So I just ran another plate across where the holes go, just for the strengthen the holes themselves for the wing dowels. So I cut the piece out, marked out on the back where to drill the holes. I drilled them and fitted them, made sure it fitted on the dowels and the wings. So I slid them on. They're good. So I put the wing back in place with the dowels sticking through this bulkhead, and then I slid the doubler up over the dowels with 5-minute epoxy on them. I used 2 pins to make sure it didn't move up and down or side to side, and just worked down until they went through. And then I put the clamps on her. Pulled the wing out and then I put the clamps on her. Yep, just so it doesn't move. So that should be pretty nice when it dries up. It's October 3rd, 2024. So I put the wing back on just to verify everything here. It had elongated dowel holes here. So it was elongated this way. I think it was so that the wing could slide in and tilt down, but I'm thinking I may not have to do that because I got the wing in like this without too much trouble at all, actually. So yeah, I got everything epoxy resin inside there, the Z epoxy. It fuel proofs everything in case your tank breaks. I've seen airplanes get ruined from leaking or broken fuel tanks. Yeah. So there's that doubler plate I put for the wing dowels, and yeah, it looks good. I'm coming along. So you got all these little gaps. I'll be filling those with hard balsa and thin CA in them in, and sand that all flush, tidy that up, and strengthen those joints. Not that I have to, because I got actually I'll use soft balsa because it goes in there easier. You can press it in, and that'll be more cosmetic. Not that you're going to see it under the cowl, but yeah, she is coming along. So kind of my morning evening job while I'm working at the hangar, getting that ready for the floor in the afternoons. Yeah, hopefully I get this thing in the air this year. Last year a bunch of us chipped in and ordered a bunch of fiberglass specialties cowls, and they have one specifically for this airplane, and it's longer than the original. And the reason for that is so in case you wanted to put a bigger 4-stroke on it, which I'm considering, the cowling will give you the extra room in the nose to do that. Here's the yeah. Here's what's good Lord, looks like Jason's mask. Yeah, so it gives you an extra, I'd say 2 inches by the looks of that. Yeah, it's just roughing it. But yeah, that's where the screw holes, I think the mounts are there. Oh yeah, because it's tapered inwards towards the bottom, so yeah, that's quite a bit. Welcome back to the drama as the epoxy dries. Okay, I came up with a genius idea. I like to think so. Smeared epoxy all over that triangle stock. I mounted my engine already, so I got the engine mount all set up. I'm like, how am I going to clamp this? And that rubber band is way too strong. This one isn't. So I put the screws in for the cowl mounting blocks. This worked a lot better when it was a dry run. There we go. And that holds this thing in place pretty nice. Of course, it's easier when it's dry, because you don't have that slippery epoxy trying to slide all over the place like it's doing right now. Shit. But it's 15 minute. If it was 5 minute, I'd be screwed. There. Let's go down that way a little bit. So to keep it from slip sliding side to side, I'll just put these clamps on her. That is good enough. If it's out a 32nd of an inch. And this thing punched the ground so many times, I think everything's out a little bit. And that's it. That's how you glue on a firewall when you got nowhere to clamp it. These Pringles lids are awesome for stirring up epoxy. One of the big reasons I like them, it's got a little ridge around them, keeps the epoxy, if you overdo it, from getting on your bench. The other thing is, people don't realize if you use cardboard, it starts absorbing the good stuff out of your epoxy. So I use the Pringle lids. So this is the next day. Of course, it's all dried up. Ooh. That one's kaput. So, we have a firewall in place, finally. And I can just get in there with a brush and put a coat of Z-epoxy in there, and I think the next thing I'm going to do is notch these bulkheads. Put a stringer in here, and then that way I can sheet one half at a time, and it'll be stronger. You can do one sheet, but the best way to do it if I did one sheet would be to put Windex on the outside, bend it, and leave it until it dries. Or just put a stringer in here, do half at a time, and that way it's easier than trying to fit one sheet. And then you do your trimming. So, and like I said, stronger. Yeah, so the old girl's starting to show some promise here. I think I'll flip it around. Rest the bottom piece there. And we'll make it look like we're getting somewhere by sticking the engine on. I think I'm going to have to flip the carburetor. I'll tell you, I flip-flopped a lot on what engine to put in this. I was going to put the 150 in it, and then I decided I'll put the FG20 in it, which is a 125 cubic inch gasoline. But then Sato has this great big honking pickup coil, and that was going to stick out of my rather expensive Glassworks or Fiberglass Specialties, I should say, cowling, and I wasn't all warm and fuzzy about doing that. So I decided to go with the 125 Sato I have, 125A. This thing flew good with the OS 120. This engine's probably lighter, but I would assume it's quite a bit more powerful. And with the amount of lumber I put in the nose of this, especially this firewall, it's actually birch aircraft ply. It's not that soft. Light ply, that brittle shit that this thing seems to be made out of. So the next thing I'm going to do, yeah, that makes it look like you're getting somewhere. Yeah, that really does. Yeah. And as you can see, I stripped all the crap off the side there, so I can see what it needs. I have to get a pilot too. I had a pilot, but he is too small. Luckily with this one, the windshields, for some strange reason, got away unscathed. So, which is good. I was tempted to turn this into a PT26, which is the Canadian version of the PT19, and it had a full canopy on it. Just like the de Havilland Tiger Moth, the Canadian version had the full canopy, so the pilots wouldn't freeze to death training in Canadian winters, especially out west. So, it ain't California, that's for sure. Lots of, must be 20 years of dust on this thing. Yeah, so the engine's in. I got my, they wanted 6 inches from the firewall to the thrust washer. And I'm going to have to hog out the canopy and see how that sits. What's nice about the canopies that you get from those guys, you can see through them. I can actually see where the mounting blocks are. And if you take a marker and circle the hole, they show up pretty nice. So it makes it getting lined up and drilled out real easy. Yeah, that looks good. Nice to see an engine in it. Actually I'm thinking that's better on where it is, the carburetor. So that'll bring my push rod off to the side. It'll be almost dead center for the fuel tank, I think. I know it worked well with the OS engine. So the tank would actually sit roughly here. You know what? That's spot on. You couldn't get that any closer to the center. We really tried. It's just a touch on the high side, but actually, there's the shelf there. Oh yeah, oh, that's perfect. Just maybe an 1/8 of an inch on the high side, which isn't going to do shit. Oh, that's great. This is a 16-ounce tank. That should be plenty. Oh yeah, for this engine it should be. So yeah, sweet. This is getting that firewall on to me is huge. I'm glad to get that on. Got the engine on. Yeah. Yeah, so I can run my push rod right through here, and that'll clear the tank, no problem. You can just Z-bend your push rod anyway. Whew. So I'm gonna, of course, I'm gonna have about probably 1/4 of a mile, maybe half a mile of triangle stock in this thing by the time it's done. But I'm going to put another, this one's kind of raggedy, so I'll put a nice thick layer of epoxy on that wood there, especially towards the front. I'm going to put another piece of 1/8 ply on top, and then I'll put a chunk of triangle stock between these two blind nuts, or I might just hog it out like I did before. Yeah. We'll see. I'm definitely going to do this though, at the top. Just to it'll look better and it'll be stronger, because right now there is nothing glued to this. So definitely going to put a piece in here. Yeah, it's fun and games. This is turning out nice. It's actually easier than I thought it was going to be. It's like once you chop out all the ugly carnage, you tack all that stuff back together for templates. Of course, there's stuff missing, but it isn't hard to figure out, especially when I printed off the pages, select pages out of the manual. This is not that bad of a job. Probably because I'm enjoying it too, actually. Enjoying restoring, because this was also my first giant scale airplane, if I remember correctly. And my father had an OS 120 small valve, 4-stroke, and I cleaned it up, fixed it up. He had two. One was decent, the other one was parts, so the valves were all gummed up. I had to clean them up, put her in this thing, and it flew like a dream. Everybody's actually surprised how well it flew on that old 120 back in the day. But the 120 is the bottom end of the range for this 150. This little Sato probably has more power than that old 150 does. So that's enough babbling. Time to get some more work done. Pays to have long clamps. So use 15-minute epoxy to put the piece of plywood across the top there, because the other one was ground up pretty bad. And I clamped it in place, and you can see I got my throttle linkage hooked up. I did have to dowel it here because it was too high, so I found the best place to put that was in the second hole down, and that way, using the Dubro push rod with the red housing, I forget what they call that, flex rod or some damn thing. But as usual, I use the outer housing, use the steel rod, and I put, in this case, because it's only a throttle and it's short, I used a cut up the inner rod and slid it over and thin CA'd it onto this rod here, and works good. Had to get a little lower though, but yeah, I think I can take those clamps off now. I really learned to like this flexible ruler for doing stuff like this. It works amazingly well, especially if you need to make extra marks. Yeah, it's just pretty hard to beat this thing. It's strange tools that seem to work good for you. This thing does really well. Alright, so I glassed up the firewall inside and out. Get in there as well. And I put in my I think it's 1/4 inch square balsa, hard balsa piece there to make this go easier and give it good support in the middle. And as you can see, I got 1/2 of it sheeted already. So all that's left is getting this side done. Yeah, before As I mentioned before, this is all done. I had to do a little sanding here. I forgot this was all wet when I started sanding, so I had to sand the crumbs off the epoxy. Oh, it looks alright, but I'll definitely get another coat here. So my servo tray, I fixed that up. I had to run a piece across here. First I tack glued the original piece, and then I ran another one over it just to reinforce it. It was pretty rough shape. These are actually in good shape, this part of the bulkhead. Tray, it's separated here and here with the wonderful very sparingly used weird white glue. In the plans they have you double this up where your servos sit for the screws, and I knocked off the old ones pretty easily actually. Tidy them up with some sandpaper and put new light ply pieces in. The rear bulkhead behind the wing, this one I fixed up, cleaned up, glued back to the fuselage side, and I put a brace. No, I haven't yet. Okay, I gotta remember to put a piece of wood in behind this one just to brace it because it was broken here. And as you can see, I'm in the middle of making my wing mount, the one that the bolts go through. And on this side, I had to put a whole new piece in. I was missing all the other. This one I got the back braces. I glued them in first, then I glued this new part of the bulkhead in. So all I gotta do is put a little brace on this one here in the back. And because you can see that this is all detached, it's allowing me to put the tabs back into the fuselage side, so it makes that a lot stronger. And there's a oh, look at that. Normally I need two hands to get this bugger out. And it's going to make a liar of me. Come on, there we go. As you can see, I used the broken side, or detached side, to spread it so I can get this in. And you can see there's a piece along the back that's going to fit under the bulkhead here. So that'll be in there nice and solid. Be a 30-minute epoxy job for sure. Yeah. And I also got to cut the horseshoe out of it. This doesn't just stay like that. There's a piece that comes out of the center, and I printed off these plans or construction book, and you can see the way it's shaped there. And there's an even better picture of it here. Shows actually they don't cut out that much, but I have absolutely nothing left of the original. And that, of course, was light ply. This was birch. The good stuff. Yeah. So, PT19 is coming right along. There. Got the rear mount in there. The blind nuts for the wing bolts. Cut that out. Probably could have went back another ½ inch anyway. Maybe even 3/4, but oh well. It's a big airplane. She'll carry the weight. And as you can see, I got a clamp, brought the fuselage sides back together, which brought all this together, and I just hit that with thin CA because it was tight enough. Yeah. So, getting there. So it's got 30-minute epoxy holding this in. I'll let that dry, and tonight I'll continue on with this.